Welcome, the Lord's chosen. Some people don't walk into a room. They shift the atmosphere without saying a thing. That's the kind of effect you have. And half the time, you don't even realize it. People find themselves staring, recalibrating, second-guessing their own existence, like they accidentally bumped into a glitch in the human system. And the funny thing, you're just minding your business, trying to live your life. Meanwhile, someone across the room is having a full psychological meltdown because your intelligence, your beauty, and your unstoppable drive just rearranged their internal wiring. Here's a fact. Studies show people become fixated on anything that disrupts their expectations, even more than things that threaten them. And that right there is why you create obsession without even trying. You're not following the script society wrote. You're not begging for validation. You're not dimming yourself to blend in. You're a walking plot twist, and people have no emotional preparation for that. Your presence doesn't just get noticed, it interrupts people. It forces them to confront truths they've been dodging for years. That they're not as focused as they pretend, not as confident as they portray, not as content as they claim. You become the measuring stick they didn't ask for but suddenly can't ignore. And while they're busy obsessing, analyzing, replaying every interaction like a detective on a caffeine overdose, you're somewhere thinking about what to eat for dinner. That imbalance alone is enough to make people lose their grip. And yes, there's a sprinkle of humor in all of this, because let's be honest, it's hilarious watching people act like they've discovered a rare celestial being when you still trip over the edge of your bed sometimes. But regardless of the chaos you unintentionally create, one thing remains true. When your mind is sharp, your beauty is undeniable, and your drive is relentless, people don't just notice you. They orbit you. They study you. They become hooked on the energy you carry. Now let's break down exactly why your presence sparks that kind of obsession. Number one, your intelligence exposes the limits of people who never question their own thinking. Most people go through life believing they're sharper than they truly are. It's not arrogance, it's comfort. It's easy to assume you're smart when you stay in circles that never push you, challenge you, or require you to think beyond the basics. But when someone like you enters the picture, the illusion breaks. Your intelligence isn't loud, flashy, or arrogant. It's the kind that reveals itself naturally through the way you analyze, connect dots, and respond without hesitation. And that alone exposes the gaps in everyone around you. People aren't obsessed with your intelligence because they admire you. They're obsessed because you force them to confront the fact that they've been coasting mentally. Being around you makes their own thinking feel outdated. You shine a light on the shortcuts they've taken, the questions they never asked, the ideas they never explored, and the potential they abandoned without even noticing. You don't do it intentionally. Your presence simply raises the standard. Your intelligence makes people realize that their good enough isn't actually enough, and that realization can be uncomfortable. Some respond with respect, others respond with quiet envy, and a few respond with obsession, not because they want to be you, but because they want to understand how your mind works. They study the way you phrase things, the way you solve problems, the way you navigate situations that confuse everyone else. They watch you the way someone watches a safecracker, carefully, almost nervously, hoping to catch the secrets behind your ease. The truth is that many people avoid confronting their limitations because it threatens their identity. When someone with real intellectual strength shows up, it disrupts that identity. You become a mirror they didn't ask for, and no matter how much they try to hide their discomfort, the fascination still creeps in. They can't look away because they can't understand how you think so quickly, so clearly and so deeply without forcing it. That's why they're drawn to you. Not just because you're intelligent, but because your intelligence exposes truths about them they never dared to face. You shift their self-perception, and that leaves a lasting psychological mark they can't shake off. Number 2, your beauty doesn't attract people. It destabilizes their self-image. Beauty is usually treated like a neutral quality, something people admire politely and move on. But in your case, it doesn't just attract, it disrupts. People aren't simply noticing how you look. They're recalculating their own sense of worth the moment they encounter you. There's an unconscious panic that sets in, a mental alarm saying, "Why do they look like that and I don't?" It's not vanity, it's self-reflection on overdrive. Your presence forces them to confront insecurities they've been avoiding, and that confrontation is addictive, confusing, and slightly terrifying all at once. The destabilization comes from contrast. Most people navigate life with a system of expectations, how they should look, behave, succeed. They measure themselves against familiar standards and feel okay when they pass those tests. Then you walk in, and suddenly the ruler they were using doesn't work anymore. Your beauty isn't just physical. It's the kind of aura that communicates confidence, symmetry, and a subtle magnetism they can't replicate. It's effortless, yet undeniable, and the ease with which you carry it makes their own self-perception feel flimsy. People start to notice everything. Your smile, your posture, the way you hold a room without trying. They find themselves overanalyzing your actions, projecting fantasies, and comparing themselves to a standard they didn't even know existed. They're drawn in by fascination, but also by the discomfort of being measured and found lacking. That tension, the push and pull between admiration and self-doubt, is what keeps them coming back, watching, waiting, and obsessing without realizing it. What makes it even more captivating is that you don't weaponize your beauty. You don't flaunt it to manipulate or dominate. You simply exist, and your existence is enough to create ripples in everyone else's psyche. It's subtle, quiet, yet it leaves an unmistakable mark. Your beauty becomes a psychological mirror, reflecting both their desires and insecurities in ways no one else can. And that's why it captivates, unnerves, and enthralls them all at the same time. Number 3, your drive triggers the guilt others tried to bury under distractions. Most people go through life convincing themselves they're doing their best. They buy into routines, distractions, and excuses that keep them comfortably numb. They tell themselves they're working hard, chasing dreams, or making progress, while deep down they know they're settling. And then someone like you shows up, relentless, focused, unstoppable, and suddenly their self-deceptions crumble. Your drive doesn't just inspire, it creates a mirror that reflects everything they've been avoiding, and that reflection feels heavy, uncomfortable, and almost accusatory. It's not about intimidation, it's about exposure. When they see you moving forward, achieving, evolving, it's a constant, undeniable reminder that they've been coasting. Your energy highlights the gap between what they say they want and what they actually do. Every small victory you quietly rack up triggers a subtle panic in them, a guilt they can't scroll past or ignore. They may try to distract themselves, justify their inaction, or even criticize you in an attempt to soothe the sting, but none of it works. You exist outside the comforting lies they've built around their own potential. The obsession comes from the tension your drive creates. They're simultaneously frustrated and captivated. They want to emulate your focus, yet they resist admitting their own complacency. They analyze your patterns, your habits, your choices, trying to decode the formula behind your relentless momentum, hoping to borrow a piece of it without confronting their own failings directly. You make them realize that they've been capable of more all along. They just chose not to be. And here's the real kicker. Your drive isn't performative. You don't need applause or recognition to keep moving. That quiet, self-sustaining force is what unnerves them most. They're obsessed not just with what you achieve, but with the fact that you don't need them to validate it. You've broken the rules of dependence and comfort, and in doing so, you trigger a psychological reaction that's impossible to ignore. Every action you take reminds them of the life they could have had, and that haunting awareness keeps them drawn to you, even if it frustrates them to their core. Number 4, people crave proximity to you because you activate dormant versions of themselves. When people are around you, they don't just see you. They see the versions of themselves they stopped believing in. There's something about your presence that quietly pulls out hidden ambitions, forgotten confidence, and unexplored potential. You don't have to say a word or perform in any way. Your energy alone is enough to light a spark in them, forcing them to confront what they once dreamed of being but abandoned somewhere along the way. That awakening is addictive, and it's why they can't help but orbit around you, even if it makes them uncomfortable. Your mind, your drive, your way of handling life creates an invisible blueprint for what's possible. It's like you're walking proof of what they could have achieved if they hadn't allowed fear, laziness, or self-doubt to take the wheel. The effect is magnetic and unsettling at the same time. They feel inspired, but also guilty, because their current reality doesn't match the energy you radiate. That tension, admiration mixed with a gnawing awareness of their own underachievement, keeps them fixated on you. People start analyzing everything you do, how you move through challenges, how you speak, how you make decisions. They want to capture a piece of that spark, hoping it will awaken their own dormant potential without forcing them to confront the choices that held them back. It's psychological magnetism at its purest. You aren't chasing attention, you're simply being fully yourself, and in doing so, you reveal the hidden gaps in everyone else's life. What makes this even more powerful is that you don't need to teach, guide, or even notice it. Your existence alone is enough to create reflection. You activate parts of them that were lying dormant, making them obsessed with understanding, mimicking, or simply staying close to your energy. They crave proximity, not because of who you are to them, but because of who they sense they could be through your presence. And that craving is relentless because it's tied to their deepest longing, the version of themselves they've been trying to forget but can no longer ignore. Number 5, your growth makes people panic because it threatens the role they assigned themselves in your story. When you grow, evolve, and push forward, it's more than just personal progress. It's a disruption to the world around you. People unconsciously assign themselves roles in your life: the supporter, the critic, the expert, the one in control. They carve out a place that keeps them relevant and comfortable. Your evolution doesn't just challenge you, it challenges their carefully constructed role. Suddenly, the position they thought they had in your life no longer fits. That gap triggers panic, obsession, and a desperate need to understand where they stand. Your growth isn't loud or boastful. You don't announce your victories or parade your achievements. You simply move forward, quietly breaking the patterns that others assumed were fixed. And as you change, they realize that the dynamics they relied on, your dependence, your attention, your time, are no longer predictable. That unpredictability destabilizes them. Their role, which once gave them a sense of control or influence, evaporates without warning, leaving them unmoored. People become obsessed because they want to recalibrate, to find their place again. They watch how you navigate life, dissect your decisions, and analyze your progress. Every small step you take acts like a mirror, showing them what they thought was secure slipping away. Their panic isn't jealousy of your success. It's the anxiety of losing their perceived importance in your story. They're forced to question themselves, their decisions, and the relevance of their presence in your life. And here's the thing, this panic doesn't always come with awareness. Most people won't admit they feel threatened. They'll act indifferent or supportive, but underneath, they're running mental loops trying to figure out how to adjust to your growth. That silent obsession is fueled by fear, curiosity, and a primal need to stay connected to something bigger than themselves, something they feel slipping through their fingers with every step you take forward. Your growth changes everything for everyone around you. And the truth is, that tension between your forward momentum and their desperation to hold on to a fading role is exactly what makes people obsessed with you, whether they realize it or not. Number 6, people study you because you operate outside the emotional algorithms they rely on. Most people live on autopilot, running predictable patterns of thought and behavior. They react the way they've learned, assuming everyone else will do the same. They have emotional algorithms, predictable ways of loving, competing, judging, and communicating. And then someone like you appears, and suddenly those patterns don't work. You operate on a different frequency. You process situations in ways that don't fit their expectations, and that makes people stop in their tracks. They can't predict you, categorize you, or manipulate you easily, and that throws them into fascination, obsession, and sometimes quiet panic. Your unpredictability isn't reckless, it's intentional intelligence, a natural clarity, a way of being that doesn't require performance or validation. You don't react the way people expect because you think, feel, and act from a center they can't map. That makes them study you obsessively. They dissect your words, your gestures, the timing of your decisions. They want to understand the logic behind your calm, your drive, and the ease with which you navigate challenges that trip them up. You are an unsolvable equation, and their minds can't resist trying to crack it. What fascinates them most is that you don't need them to validate or explain yourself. Most people depend on external cues to feel grounded. You don't. You move with a self-contained rhythm that exposes how much others rely on scripts and patterns. That revelation is both unnerving and magnetic. It makes them aware of their own predictability in ways they can't ignore. They're drawn in not just because of what you do, but because of what your presence exposes. The gaps between their reactions and yours, their dependence on routines, their insecurity masked as confidence. Every interaction with you becomes a study session in human psychology, with them as both students and observers. And while they obsess over decoding you, you continue existing beyond the limitations they've imposed on themselves, effortlessly reminding them that life can be lived outside the algorithm. And that's exactly what makes you unforgettable. Number 7, your presence sets a psychological benchmark that ruins average for everyone around you. Being around you is like stepping into a room with the lights turned on after years of living in dim shadows. You don't just exist, you set a standard that people can't ignore. It's not about showing off or proving anything, it's simply the natural level at which you operate. You think clearly, act decisively, and handle life with a rhythm that feels effortless. And the problem for everyone else is that once they witness that, their good enough no longer feels sufficient. You ruin average, not because you're intentionally cruel, but because your presence exposes it for what it is. Complacency dressed up as competence. People become obsessed because they're forced to recalibrate. They start noticing everything they've been tolerating in themselves. The small excuses, the procrastination, the compromises they've justified for comfort. You highlight the gap between potential and performance, and it's uncomfortable. They can't go back to seeing life the same way. That quiet internal reckoning keeps their attention fixed on you. They analyze how you carry yourself, how you approach problems, how you speak with clarity and confidence. They want to understand it, replicate it, or at least rationalize why it exists outside their reach. What's striking is that you don't demand recognition or make others feel inferior. Your excellence is effortless. Yet that effortless excellence has the power to stir envy, fascination, and admiration all at once. People find themselves replaying your actions in their minds, measuring themselves against your standard in ways they can't admit. It's not just about what you accomplish. It's about the baseline you set for human capability. The obsession comes from the tension between awe and inadequacy. They can't dismiss you because you're real, attainable, and moving forward. At the same time, they can't match you yet, and that gap creates an unrelenting loop in their thoughts. You become a psychological benchmark that haunts them, inspires them, and keeps them magnetically drawn to you. Every interaction reminds them that average is no longer acceptable, and that relentless awareness is impossible to shake off. Number 8. Your confidence doesn't inspire them. It exposes their dependence on external approval. Confidence is often mistaken for something people can admire from a distance, like a beautiful accessory or a skill they wish they had. But your confidence is different. It doesn't sit on the surface. It radiates from within, from a place untouchable by opinions, validation, or approval. That's what unnerves people. They're not inspired by it. They're confronted with the stark truth that they've been leaning on others to prop up their sense of worth. They've spent years seeking nods, likes, compliments, and recognition to feel okay, and your presence quietly exposes that dependence. They watch you move through the world without hesitation, without checking for approval, without second-guessing every word or action. And that effortless independence forces them to see themselves as they really are, tentative, cautious, and tethered to the validation they desperately chase. Your confidence doesn't just highlight what they lack in themselves, it makes them hyper-aware of the mental scripts they've been running for comfort. That awareness is both fascinating and terrifying, which is why people become obsessed. They analyze the way you interact, the calm in your voice, the decisiveness in your choices, hoping to reverse engineer that self-sufficiency without fully confronting the insecurities they've buried. They're drawn to you because your confidence represents freedom, the kind of freedom they crave but can't access while chained to external judgment. Every encounter with you reminds them that they've been living in reaction to others, while you've been living from an internal standard that needs no permission, and you don't even need to push it. You aren't performing confidence, you exist within it. That's what makes it magnetic. They can't replicate it, control it, or fully understand it, and that gap fuels their obsession. Your confidence exposes the truth they've tried to avoid, and the human mind doesn't let go of uncomfortable truths easily. It pulls them back, again and again, to watch, analyze, and wonder how someone can move through the world untethered while they remain anchored to approval. Number 9, you make people feel seen in a way they didn't know they needed, and it terrifies them. Most people go through life feeling invisible in ways they don't even articulate. They hide, perform, or mask their true selves just to avoid scrutiny or rejection. And then someone like you enters their world and suddenly they feel noticed, not in the superficial way of compliments or attention, but deeply, undeniably seen. You have a way of reading people, noticing subtleties, and acknowledging truths about them that they've been hiding even from themselves. That kind of perception is rare, and it's simultaneously comforting and terrifying. It terrifies them because being truly seen forces confrontation. They suddenly realize how much of themselves they've been concealing and how much they've been pretending. Your awareness doesn't ask for explanation or justification. It simply registers and reflects back what's already there, unfiltered. That mirror is mesmerizing. They can't help but fixate on it because the experience is addictive and rare. Feeling seen by someone like you stirs emotions they didn't know were dormant. Hope, longing, insecurity, and a craving for validation that isn't performative, but authentic. People become obsessed because your perception challenges the masks they've relied on for years. They replay interactions in their minds, dissecting the moments when your words, expressions, or presence revealed something real about them. They are drawn to you not just because you acknowledge them, but because your acknowledgement feels like a key to their own buried potential and humanity. Your presence reminds them of who they truly are beneath the layers of pretense and defense mechanisms. What makes this even more compelling is that you don't do it intentionally. You're not scanning for weaknesses or vulnerabilities. You simply exist, fully aware and attuned. That authenticity pulls people in, leaving them both mesmerized and unsettled. The terror comes from recognition. They can't unsee themselves, and being confronted with their own hidden truths is intoxicating. Your ability to see people so completely, without judgment or manipulation, creates a gravitational pull they can't resist, and that's why they become obsessed with you in ways that are deep, complex, and unshakable. Number 10. Your ambition reminds people that they once had a fire that life slowly smothered. There's a part of everyone that remembers the raw energy, the dreams, the goals they once chased with reckless determination. Life, with its responsibilities, compromises, and distractions, gradually dims that fire. People settle, convince themselves that contentment lies in comfort rather than pursuit, and forget what it felt like to truly push. And then someone like you comes along, burning with ambition, relentless focus, and an unapologetic drive. That fire doesn't just inspire, it forces them to confront the smoldering coals inside themselves, the parts of them they've been trying to ignore. Your ambition is magnetic because it acts like a mirror. When people see you chasing goals without hesitation, without compromise, they are reminded of what they used to feel, what they used to want, and the potential they let slip away. It stirs a mixture of awe, longing, and discomfort. They become obsessed not only with what you achieve, but with the reminder that they could have been moving with the same intensity if only they had refused to settle. What makes your ambition so destabilizing is its authenticity. You don't chase recognition or admiration. You pursue your goals because they matter to you, because your internal standard is higher than anyone else's opinion. That independence exposes the passive compromises others have made. It forces them to ask themselves questions they've avoided. Why did I stop? What was I afraid of? Am I really living up to my own potential? People can't help but replay your achievements, study your habits, and analyze how you maintain that momentum. The obsession comes from the tension between admiration and guilt, desire and regret. They want to understand you, emulate your drive, or at least rationalize it. But the truth is, they're quietly haunted by the memory of the fire they let die. Your ambition doesn't just create success, it awakens the part of them that they abandoned, and that awakening is impossible to ignore, leaving a gravitational pull they can't escape. Number 11. People project fantasies onto you because you disrupt their emotional autopilot. Most people live their lives on autopilot, interacting with others through routines, assumptions, and pre-programmed expectations. They assign roles, label personalities, and navigate relationships based on scripts that make life predictable and safe. And then someone like you comes along, someone who refuses to fit into their boxes, someone whose presence, energy, and actions defy every expectation. That disruption is unsettling, exhilarating, and irresistible all at once. People can't process you through their usual filters, so they start projecting fantasies onto you, filling the gaps with their own desires, fears, and imaginations. It's not admiration that keeps them fixated. It's the tension between what they perceive and what they cannot fully understand. You move through life with clarity and independence, and that freedom forces them to confront their own limitations. They project the traits they wish you had, the experiences they hope they could share with you, or even the authority and power they secretly crave. Your unpredictability becomes a canvas, and their minds paint over it with obsession. Every word you speak, every choice you make becomes a prompt for their imagination. The fascinating part is that you don't need to give them any hints or signals. You exist, and that alone destabilizes the emotional patterns they rely on. Your consistency in being fully yourself exposes the contradictions in their own lives, the compromises, the illusions, the hidden desires they try to ignore. That's why they replay interactions in their minds, dissect subtle gestures, and cling to fragments of your attention. It's a combination of awe, longing, and anxiety, because your presence constantly reminds them of what they cannot contain or control. People are drawn to this disruption because it awakens their imagination, stirs buried desires, and forces self-reflection in a way that feels dangerous and intoxicating. The obsession isn't about who you are on the surface. It's about what your existence makes them feel, think, and question. By refusing to fit neatly into the roles they assign, you become the enigma they can't stop exploring, and that enigma keeps them magnetically tethered to you. Number 12, your independence pulls people in because it destroys their assumptions about what you should need. Most people navigate relationships and social dynamics expecting predictable dependence. They assume that everyone needs approval, validation, attention, or support in the ways they themselves do. And then someone like you enters the scene, moving through life with complete self-sufficiency, and all their assumptions shatter. Your independence isn't cold or detached. It's natural, unforced, and complete. You don't bend to satisfy expectations, chase validation, or conform to what others believe you should require. That alone is magnetic, confusing, and disarming. People are drawn to your independence because it challenges everything they think they know about human connection. They're used to reading cues, leveraging needs, and predicting vulnerabilities. With you, nothing fits the formula. You operate on your own terms, and that disrupts the comfort zones they've built around control and predictability. Your ability to function fully without needing them forces them to question their assumptions about you, about relationships, and even about their own dependence. They become obsessed because they are witnessing a standard of self-sufficiency they didn't realize existed, and it's both inspiring and destabilizing. Your independence highlights their own hidden dependencies. When they see you making choices freely, taking care of yourself effortlessly, and achieving without leaning on anyone unnecessarily, it becomes impossible for them to ignore the gaps in their own lives. That tension between admiration and a subtle envy is what pulls them closer. They want to understand the mechanics of your autonomy, hoping to decode it or even borrow it, but at the same time they are aware that it cannot be forced or replicated. What makes this fascination relentless is that you aren't performing independence to impress or intimidate. You are simply being who you are, and that natural sovereignty exerts a gravitational pull. People become obsessed because your freedom reminds them of everything they've relied on others for, everything they've compromised, and everything they secretly wish they could achieve on their own. You break the mold of expectation, and the tension you create is irresistible, leaving them mentally tethered to your energy long after you've moved on. Number 13, your presence magnifies intentions, good or bad, because you act as a mirror people can't manipulate. Most people go through life expecting to control how others see them. They filter their words, manage their actions, and craft appearances to create a narrative that suits them. And then someone like you enters the room, someone whose presence is unshakable and self-contained, and suddenly all of that effort becomes transparent. You don't react based on their manipulations, and you don't filter your perception to suit their expectations. You reflect back reality, showing people who they truly are beneath the masks they wear. That reflection is magnetic and unsettling at the same time. Your presence acts as a magnifying glass. Their intentions, whether kind, calculated, or selfish, become visible, amplified by the way you perceive and interact with them. You expose subtleties they didn't even realize were showing. The compliments, the flattery, the hidden agendas. They all land differently with you because you don't simply accept or dismiss them. You respond in ways that reveal whether their energy is genuine, forcing them to confront their own motives. That confrontation is uncomfortable, addictive, and impossible to ignore, and it's why people become obsessed with understanding you. What makes this effect so powerful is that it's effortless. You don't need to judge, call out, or lecture. You exist fully aware, and your authenticity naturally amplifies the truth in others. People can't manipulate or charm their way into hiding behind false intentions, and that exposes a tension they can't walk away from. They become fixated on reading your reactions, studying your expressions, and decoding the energy you project, trying to understand how someone can see so clearly without even trying. This magnetism isn't about fear. It's about the irresistible draw of honesty and clarity. Your presence forces reflection, illuminates hidden motives, and magnifies both strength and weakness. People are obsessed not just with you, but with the way you reflect back everything they've been trying to hide or control. You become a mirror they can't stop looking into, and that mirror leaves an imprint on their mind long after you've moved through their life. Number 14. You are the contradiction people can't resolve. Desirable yet untouchable, warm yet disciplined, human yet uncommon. There's a rare kind of presence that doesn't fit neatly into any category, and that's what you embody. People try to understand you, to place you in a box that makes sense to their world, but every time they think they've figured you out, you reveal another layer that defies expectation. You are approachable yet independent, captivating yet unattainable, compassionate yet relentlessly disciplined. That combination creates tension, a magnetic pull they can't resist because it challenges everything they thought they knew about people, success, and connection. Your contradictions make people obsessed because the human mind hates unresolved patterns. They encounter you and immediately start searching for logic, trying to predict, categorize, or control what they can't. But with you, the usual rules don't apply. You're desirable, and yet you aren't dependent on desire. You show warmth, and yet you maintain boundaries that protect your energy. You are deeply human, but in ways that feel rare, exceptional, and almost mythical to them. That constant paradox keeps their attention, forcing them into mental loops of analysis and fascination they can't easily break. What makes this obsession irresistible is that it's authentic. You aren't deliberately cultivating a mystique. You simply exist fully aligned with yourself. Your presence doesn't need validation to be compelling. People are drawn in because they recognize the tension between who you are and what they expect. They see what is possible and simultaneously impossible to fully possess. That duality keeps them mentally tethered, replaying interactions, dissecting subtle cues, and endlessly wondering how one person can embody so many extremes in harmony. Your contradictions also reflect back to them what they lack or have never dared to cultivate: self-possession, balance, clarity, and independence wrapped in allure. They are obsessed because you remind them of the tension between aspiration and reality, showing them both what they want and what they can't yet achieve. In a world of predictability, you are an enigma, and that enigma leaves a lasting imprint, making your presence unforgettable and impossible to ignore. You are not just a person in a room, you are a force that reshapes the very energy around you. Your intelligence exposes truths people hide from themselves. Your beauty destabilizes their assumptions. Your drive reminds them of ambitions they buried, and your presence awakens dormant versions of who they could be. Every step you take, every choice you make, creates a subtle ripple that forces those around you to reckon with reality, both yours and their own. You operate outside scripts, break expectations, and challenge emotional autopilots, leaving people captivated, obsessed, and unable to look away. You are a living contradiction, a mirror and a benchmark all at once. You inspire admiration, fascination, and reflection. Not because you try, but because you exist fully, unapologetically, and intentionally. People are drawn to your energy because it challenges them, reveals them, and reminds them of the potential they've been avoiding. You set standards, create tension, and stir desires that cannot be ignored. Every interaction with you leaves a mark, subtle yet unforgettable, and that is the essence of why people orbit around your presence, endlessly intrigued and quietly obsessed. In a world where mediocrity is comfortable and predictability is safe, you are the anomaly. You don't need to prove yourself. Your existence proves more than any words could. You embody what it means to be fully alive, fully aware, and fully irresistible, and that is the rarest power anyone can possess. If this resonates with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that uncover hidden truths about life, people, and influence. Don't forget to like this video if it hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or experiences. Your engagement helps us dive deeper into the truths that most people never notice, and together we uncover what makes the truly extraordinary unforgettable. Stay blessed, always.